Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, May 27th, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about what a Democratic wave on the House, Senate, and presidential election would look like for the Democratic Party in 2020. I discussed the possibility of a Republican wave in some previous videos, probably around a week back, and it was seeming very improbable. Looking at the overall landscape, especially with these House elections, with the Democratic Party already at a very high point, it reminds me of a very similar election situation in 2006 when the Democratic Party won back the House of Representatives and held similar seats in terms of overall composition. The seats were in vastly different places. We were talking about Democratic control in the South and lack of control in the West, where it's obviously flipped now. And looking at 2006, the Democratic Party definitely increased in 2008. In fact, it's probably going to take a little bit of clicking, but let's go ahead and look back just for visual purposes. That way you can go ahead and see what it was like in 2006. The Democratic Party won back and Nancy Pelosi became the first woman Speaker of the House. So it was a historic win for the Democratic Party. They have around the same seats as they do right now. The Democratic Party has 235. Nancy Pelosi back then had 233 under her belt. The Republican Party went down to 202, so it still was around 200. I think the Republican Party now is around 200 because of the party flips and special elections, but again, we have an election up in 5 months, so it really won't mean much back up then. But if you look at where the Democratic Party had all of their control, is generally around the South. Really no Democratic representatives here anymore. Areas up here, they do still have a pretty strong hold in the Northeast, but it seems to be like the Sun Belt was the area in which the Democratic Party made the most gains, at least Southwest, not Sun Belt, sorry about that. But in 2008, the Democratic Party did gain seats, and they gained 21, so it was a pretty substantial amount. It wasn't as if they were just narrowly improving. In 2012, they gained 8 seats, so it was a mild improvement. In 2016, they gained 6 seats, so presidential elections, even when going to a GOP candidate or narrowing up in terms of electoral margin, still typically benefit the Democrats on the House of Representatives level. But looking at the overall, I guess, wave possibility, you'd really have to take a look at what we're starting off with. We're looking at the same generic ballot polling data between the Democrats and the Republicans from 2018, an 8-point spread nationwide. In 2016, this spread was a lot closer. The Democratic Party fluctuated between the Republicans. At points in time, the Republicans led in the generic ballot and the Democrats led. In 2016, despite Donald Trump winning the election, the Democrats gained seats in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. In 2018, the Republican Party made gains in the Senate, but the Democratic Party, still perceiving 2018 as a Democratic wave because it 100% was, gained numerous governor seats and numerous House seats, enough to put them back in the majority in the state. In fact, Paul Ryan, the former Speaker of the House prior to 2018's midterm elections, retired, and he was the Speaker of the House. That was really redundant. Sorry about that. But looking at the 2020 landscape, the possibility of a wave for the Democratic Party has to come with a number of factors. In 2018, it was the constant announcement of retirements, which you can see on the map. Every single state in dark red is a Republican who has announced that they are retiring in these seats, which means that it is a very real possibility the Democratic Party makes a play for those seats. For example, Montana, even though it is a solid Republican state on the presidential level, might actually have a possibility of going to the Democratic Party in this House election. In Oregon's 2nd District, there's a retiring incumbent, and I believe there's the 2018 Republican nominee who ran for governor running for that seat, but nobody knows if he's going to win the primary or not. So it looks like in Utah, there's a retiring seat. There's one in California. There's just a number of areas in which the Republican Party is having some retirements, while the Democratic Party is also having retirements in Iowa, in New Mexico, in Hawaii, in Washington. Generally, these seats are going to be rated as safe. If you look right in New York City, and if you look in Chicago, and you look in other areas, there are maybe retiring Democrats, but these are solid Democratic areas. For the GOP, in terms of their landscape, a lot of these seats are considered safe, but you cannot say the Democratic Party won't make a play for it. And these seats would be crucial if there was to be a Democratic wave. If we're talking about something similar to 2008, I honestly think that's not going to be realistic. A Democratic wave at this point would be gaining any amount of seats after 2020. Yes, presidential elections do benefit the Democrats, but combined with an electoral college victory, if they do defeat Donald Trump and they gain seats, it definitely could be perceived as a Democratic wave. Looking at the United States Senate map, the Democratic Party is already poised to gain 3 seats in the states of North Carolina, Colorado, Arizona, and Maine, with the Republican Party winning back the state of Alabama. They have many more opportunities to win, and this 2020 landscape does not benefit the Republican Party whatsoever. Looking at Arizona, I made a video about the Sun Belt today. You can go ahead and check that out if you want to see me discuss these states more in depth. But Colorado and Arizona have actually been rated as likely Democrat by some top pollsters. And if you look around, I mean, these are 2 states with Republican senators that are being characterized as likely Democrat. I mean, the fact that Arizona, a state that went to Donald Trump in 2016, went to a Republican in 2016 in the Senate election, 4 years later has now been rated as likely or even lean Democrat, says a lot about the growth for the Democratic Party in this area. Colorado with an unpopular incumbent, with Arizona with an unpopular Republican incumbent, both of these states are going to be bad news for the Republican Party. And those states are pretty much going to be automatic pickups for the Democratic Party against the GOP. When you look at some of these other areas, the Democratic Party, again, has more opportunities for pickups, whether that's in Georgia's special election or holding on to Alabama or winning over in Iowa or possibly even winning in Kansas, depending on who the GOP nominee, with Montana more in play than it was in 2018, considering that it went to the Democrat by not as close as I honestly thought it would be, especially with a number of other Senate races going to the GOP, whether it was in Florida or Indiana or North Dakota or Missouri. A lot of those seats went to the GOP, but Montana stayed safe for the Democratic Party. Looking at the state of Montana, it is possible that the Democrats win there with a popular governor running and, a lot of force for the GOP. The question starts being, where can the GOP even make gains in? This is a very, very, very good map for the Democratic Party, even with them losing a Senate seat in Alabama. Alabama is not crucial to their overall party win because if this happens, Joe Biden will probably win the election. An overall Democratic wave on the presidential level will look something similar to this. Joe Biden cannot win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania only and declare it a Democratic wave. Yes, the states did flip back, but it's a smaller electoral college victory than 2016. And also, it really only flipped back states that were previously solid for the Democratic Party. He really didn't branch much over into North Carolina or Ohio or Iowa, with a changing battleground in Georgia and Texas, or in that scenario, Arizona. So when I'm thinking, with the with the federal judge knocking down the poll tax on Florida voters and Arizona becoming a more Democratic state, with the Rust Belt looking a lot better for Joe Biden, I'm thinking this is a map that I could see being declared as a Democratic wave. It looks very similar to the 2012 map. It was off by just a couple of electoral votes. And yes, it's not a resounding victory. It's not a huge victory for Joe Biden, but it is larger than 2016. And it is also going to be accompanied by, without a doubt, Democratic gains in the House of Representatives if this ends up being the map. We're talking about increased Democratic turnout in the Rust Belt, which will likely hold on to a number of the seats that flipped in 2018, and with some retiring incumbents, could possibly flip some other races. And if you look over in the Sun Belt, this is going to be another solid area for the Democratic Party. 3 House seats in Nevada, 5 House seats in Arizona, 4 House seats in Colorado, 3 House seats in New Mexico, flips in California, flipping back that 21st district as a possibility. I mean, looking at that, that's something I would start to classify as a Democratic wave. On the presidential level, anything really over the 306 electoral votes that Donald Trump had in 2016. Democrats really should not be focusing on just narrowly winning the election, which is the exact reason why I honestly think that Joe Biden should choose Senator Kamala Harris or another Representative Val Demings is perfectly fine. I think that an African-American female, not African-American because Kamala Harris is not African-American, a black female would do very well as his vice presidential nominee. Having the first woman of color as vice president would be something that, though may not be breaking the same barrier as 2016, would win back a lot of those single-issue voters that were very much inspired by the possibility of a woman in office. And when I say single-issue voters, I don't mean anything negative by that. I'm just saying that a lot of them were circulating a lot of their support about first woman president, breaking that glass ceiling, which was very important. But it looks like it's going to be accompanied by a Joe Biden victory this time if this was the scenario. So when we're looking at candidates that can possibly branch out in this scenario, it'd probably do better if there was a Hispanic vice president. But I honestly think that these states are going to be on the backs of Joe Biden's increased white turnout and also the vice president's minority turnout, which honestly could come with Senator Harris. And if you look at the polling data, it looks like Elizabeth Warren actually might be performing the best out of all of them, but it just seems either one, way too smart for a move for the Democratic Party, and number two, people would really want to see a woman of color in office. And just because a plurality of Democratic voters want Elizabeth Warren, 37% is not the majority. And you have to keep in mind that women of color pretty much account for the rest of the overall polling data. So keep that in mind as well. But also looking at the United States Senate, a Democratic wave could look anywhere from here to 52 seats for them. That's pretty much the realistic edge for them. That is combined with a Georgia possible flip or a really horrible GOP candidate in the Kansas Senate race and a Montana victory. But pretty much anything 3 gains or more for the Democratic Party, I would consider to be a wave on the Senate level. And in the House of Representatives, the Democratic Party is working on very similar landscapes, the same exact districts from 2018. They're defending a lot of districts, but also are holding the same type of electoral margin in the overall polling data in the national average. So the Democratic Party is at a very similar standpoint to 2018, and I don't think that's a horrible position to be in, because if you're 8 points up nationwide and you're defending a lot of the similar seats, it is possible, with the number of retiring Republicans, that the Democrats do actually make gains. The California 21st District was actually probably one of the worst special election performance I've seen for the Democratic Party for a decade now. And I honestly don't think they're going to make that same mistake in 2020. Whether or not they choose to elect Christy Smith in 2020 is not up to me, but I do think that's more likely than not, given the fact that they're, at least based off of all of the indications from all of the data we've had previously, increased Democratic turnout, increased minority turnout, with a possible woman of color on the VP ticket. Again, all tying back to increased minority turnout in areas, especially, in central cities, New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, looking at Milwaukee, looking at, what is the capital of Michigan? Lansing? No, not Detroit. I was thinking capital. I don't know why I wasn't, whatever. Philadelphia. These are key areas that all of the factors pretty much benefit Vice President Biden at this point, and in turn would benefit Democrats. Down ballot voting is going to be super important. Victories like this will result in victories such as this, which will result in gains in the overall House of Representatives. And that's, I guess, my type of visual landscape for the 2020 election and what a Democratic wave would look like. I know I didn't really include much about the governor's races because they actually are going to be pretty impactful. Let's go ahead and just take a look at it real quick, and I'll just briefly cover over it. There aren't that many seats up. It's nothing similar to 2018. It'll likely end up with the same party composition if the Democrats hold on to Montana and they hold on to North Carolina and they win in Delaware and they win in Washington and then puts them at 24. Republicans are favored to win in pretty much everything else. So, really wouldn't see much of a Democratic wave in here, especially with minimal possibilities for pickups, if any at all, for the Democratic Party. I think that's pretty much it. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all tomorrow.